Please join me in giving Dr. John Bardo a warm Pachyderm Club welcome.
Thank you, and thank you all very much for having me back. I think this is my second time speaking with you all. I did shift from economics to sociology because the economists have a concept called ceteris paribus. I don't know if any of you have heard that or if you've ever studied economics, but ceteris paribus means all of the things being equal. So in other words, if I just assume that the world is all flat, then I can go from here to there in an hour and it's great. Thank you. But the world isn't all flat. And the sociologists, the big difference between the economists and the type of sociology I did is they assume the world has mountains, they assume there are rivers, they assume that it isn't all ceteris paribus. So I actually studied the same things in both disciplines, we just called them something slightly different. And in fact, the part of the discipline I'm in is pretty narrow. It's not something that you see at most universities. Okay, so I'll start with a question. What's the biggest export out of the Wichita metropolitan area? Airplanes. What's the second biggest export out of the Wichita metropolitan area? Brains. Brains. We export $150 million net a year of educated people. 150 million net a year. 1.5 billion per decade. And we're replacing educated, high-paying jobs with more people. The metropolitan area is growing, but the average salary is being dropped by about $20,000 a job. I don't know about where you live, but where I live, that's a recipe for disaster. And if we don't think differently about what we're doing and how we do it, there's every probability that by the time your grandchildren are in their 40s and 50s, Wichita will look a lot like Detroit. There really isn't a reason for that. We can fix it, we can change it, but we do have to think differently. And so what I'm going to talk about today is what we as a university are trying to do to help the metropolitan area think a little differently about what's possible. And when I talk about the metro area, it's not the federally legally defined metro area. It's the 10 counties of south central Kansas. Because for us as a university, that's really kind of our home base. And when the state looks to us and says, can you help? That's the group that they're talking about. So it's not just Sedgwick County and the few surrounding counties. It's all of the area in those 10 counties. So that's very much where we are as an institution. So what I want to do today is talk to you really only about two things, keep it as simple as I can, and then this will be a relatively short talk, try to interact with you more than talk at you. One is, what are we doing to try to change who we are? And then what model of economic development might be valuable and might be useful in moving things forward? And it's quite a different model than the one that has been applied nationwide since the 50s. So this is not about Wichita. It's not about Wichita doing anything wrong. It's about there was a way of doing things, and everybody thought they were doing it right, but we've learned that it doesn't work, and yet we still keep trying to do it because if we do it the next time, it will work. And it's the old thing about if I keep hitting myself in the head with a hammer, sooner or later it's going to feel good. Yeah, no, it doesn't. Just stop hitting yourself in the head with a hammer, and you might feel a little better. So the model is a very different model. It doesn't say you don't do economic development. And in fact, if you don't do it, you'll lose. But it says you do it in a very different way than what cities have been doing it around the United States. So what is economic development? Economic development differs from growth. Economic development is about improving the community of which you are a part. It's about jobs, it's about wealth, it's about having a better quality of life. There are ways of creating economic growth that I wouldn't want to be part of. Think about it. We could decide that, well, wouldn't this be, we could make a whole lot of money if we make Wichita the nuclear waste dump for the entire world. A lot of money being made there, folks. A lot of money. We could certainly grow our GDP. And it's really cool because you wouldn't actually have to turn on your stove ever, right? You could just take your hot dog, stick it out the window, that sucker be roasted. I mean, it'd be good to go, right? So there are ways of creating economic wealth that really aren't what we want, right? And so when we're talking about economic development, what we're talking about is the kind of growth that benefits our people by creating jobs, wealth, and business competitiveness. And those are really the three goals of economic development. Net broad-based job growth, increased private sector wealth, and increased competitiveness for those businesses that are in your region. That's what we're trying to accomplish. If you're trying to do anything else with economic development, you're fooling yourself. It isn't economic development. You're making investments of something you want to do, and you had to have some justification for it, so you call it economic development. It's like when I eat my wife's lemon meringue pie, I find all kinds of rationalizations as to why that won't make me fat, right? Because I really like that pie. Well, there are all kinds of actions you can take as a public body that don't have anything to do with economic development, but they sure sound good if you call them that. And so people tend to, oh yeah, that's economic development. No. Is it going to do those three things? If it does those three things, it's economic development. If it does anything else, it's not. Okay, so current thinking in economic development is very different than traditional thinking. You go out on what's called, in the old way of thinking about it, you go out on the buffalo hunt. Remember the buffalo hunt? Ah, boy, IBM is going to locate a branch. I'm going to go up and fly up to New York, and I'm going to offer them free land, 100 years of tax abatement. I'm going to move the river so it flows right by that parcel of land. I'm going to take and import workers, even if they don't want to come. I'm going to get them on a bus. I'm going to put them there, and by God, we'll have 500 jobs, and it'll only cost me $3 million a job, but I'll be able to say I got 500 jobs, right? That's the hyperbolic version of economic development as it's been practiced around the United States. If you look what it costs to bring a job to Topeka, to bring Mars there, I don't remember the exact number, but you could have paid the people, just paid them, and it would have been cheaper because the amount of money it takes. So the new thinking on economic development is quite different. Now, when you have a situation like Cargill and a big employer says they're going to leave the city, you got to deal with that. I mean, that's a whole separate issue. But the real thinking on economic development is it's about the market. And it's about your community's position in the market and how you use public policy and public money to magnify the capacity of private enterprise to compete in the market. It's not about any one business. It's about how do I take the enterprises in my area and help them be more competitive? How do I get the blocks out that make my area less competitive in the marketplace? So instead of focusing on one business, Deborah's shoe store, and we're going to make that the biggest shoe store in town, that wouldn't take much. Instead of doing that, we say, wow, we want to have a lot of shoe stores in Wichita. How do we make the market for shoe stores in Wichita work better? How do we make this a feasible place? Right? Very different thought process goes into that, because you're not investing in one company unless you absolutely have no choice. You're investing in those things that make any company in that area more competitive. And so you are aligning public policy in the market as opposed to misaligning public policy and the market. Okay? Very, very different thought process. Now, second, we know that any area of the world, that there are businesses that do better in that area than other kinds of businesses. And they tend to naturally gravitate to those areas. For us, it's real easy to see aviation, right? We didn't sit here one day and go, wow, let's make Wichita an aviation cluster. Businesses gravitated here because there was a reason why being in Wichita was an asset to them. Well, that's true for other areas of the country too, where there are things that are gravitating there because they are natural and normal. And so what you're trying to do with a modern economic development model is say, what are the businesses that actually can and will grow? Whether we do a lot with them or not, they'll go on about their business. But if we as public policy people say, wait a minute, let's go talk to them about what they really need, What do they really need? Can we get something going with them that actually enhances their ability to expand and to grow and to be more competitive? Does it make sense? Okay, now, how do you get wealth? You don't get wealth by selling things to each other, right? I sell you a loaf of bread, you sell me a pair of shoes. We feel better, but that doesn't create any net new wealth. You get net new wealth by trading outside of your area. And so a lot of the effort has to be around creating goods that trade beyond the region for which you're responsible, because that draws money into the area, that creates net new wealth, net new jobs. And so a lot of our interests is how do we help those clusters that are in this area that can trade outside of this area grow and prosper so that they can create net new wealth. Very straightforward. What do they need? What works? What's of value? Now, don't get me wrong. If I want to buy a car, I'll go local and buy a car. If I want to go buy a loaf of bread, I'll go local and buy a loaf of bread. But services don't tend to create a lot of wealth. They tend to spread it around. But the new wealth comes from trade. And it comes from trade outside of your region. We also know that when you can trade in technology-based enterprises and technology-based goods, that you create much more wealth than you do any other way. Much more. Studies of Cupertino, California show that Apple Computer has 12,000 employees. They are responsible, because of those 12,000 employees and the way they trade, for creating another 60,000 jobs in and around Cupertino, 35,000 of which are unskilled labor. So everybody is benefiting, regardless of skill level, by having those 12,000 jobs at Apple. And so what we're trying to do as a university is to say, where are the high-end kinds of enterprises and technology-based enterprises that create enough wealth to cause other jobs to be created in the community at the rate of 4 or 5 for every job we can help create, and thereby spreading the wealth throughout the community. And so when you hear, well, you don't really care about shoe stores, yeah, you're right. Well, you're not helping start a new Dillon's. You're right. That's somebody else's job. That's not where we're going to spend a lot of time, because that's not where the wealth gets created. It's good for the community, don't get me wrong, but it's not where the wealth gets created, and we have limited resources, so we're going to focus on how we help where we get the biggest bang for the buck. So, technology clusters are the key drivers, and what we also know nationally is that startup technology companies account over the last 2 decades for all net new jobs in the United States. Technology companies with less than 5 years life history account for all net new jobs in the United States. If Coke hires, IBM lays off. Right? So what happens is, for these bigger, older companies, they kind of shift from one place to the other. And by the way, we want them to shift here. We'll gladly help them. But really where the bang is, where the rubber hits the road, is in technology-based new enterprises. That's where you really get your bang for the buck. So that's where we're spending a lot of time and effort. So we know from studies that have been done here in the area, BREG stands for the Blueprint for Regional Economic Growth, that there are 8 clusters in this community that are naturally aggregating and growing on their own. And so these are the 8 clusters that we're going to spend a lot of time thinking about, working on, and trying to improve their market position. We're not going to spend a lot of time on others. If somebody else wants to come, we're not going to tell them no, but we're not going to spend a whole lot of time working on those issues, because this is where the money is, this is where the market has already shown it can work, and this is where we believe that by our actions, we can help the market work better. So that's what we're doing. By the way, one of the biggest revelations of this whole process of looking at the region, when people talk about Wichita, even I hear this from the governor, well, Wichita is an aviation center. Yeah. But if you look at these clusters, almost all of the clusters require engineers. And what the biggest revelation for us was, Wichita is not an aviation center. Wichita is an engineering center, the biggest part of which happens to be aviation. But we really are an engineering center. Well, if you think about us as an engineering center, that causes you to think very differently about what you do, right? It's like AT&T saying we're a telephone company versus AT&T saying we're a communications company. They're very different concepts, and they lead you down very different roads. And so we're focusing on Wichita as an engineering center, a big piece of which is aviation, but there's a lot of other opportunities. And I always love talking about this one because this is my favorite conversation. We are one of the North America's leading lubrication centers. I never in my life ever thought I would be giving a speech about lubrication. But we are. And we have a potential of relocating a business from Japan here that is the only company in the world that makes non-oil-based lubricants for automobiles. So we have real interest in having a chemical engineering program to help them choose Wichita and to help them be successful in Wichita. We're not going to try to give them tax breaks and all that. That's not our issue. But can we help them get the workforce they need? Can we help them with their supply chain? Can we help them with their distribution chain? And if we can do all those things, they're going to be very competitive. And all the tax breaks in the world won't help them if they can't do those things. And so they may come for the tax break, but 5 years from now they'll be moving on. And what we're looking at is how do we make this a long-term investment that allows this community to be strong. So there are 3 key components that make this new model work. One of which the city, the county, the region has 100% ignored like it didn't exist. Drives me crazy. The number one issue out there is R&D, research and development. If you're not focused on research and development, you cannot win. And I'm not talking about only university research. In fact, enterprise-based research has a bigger impact quicker than university research does. We absolutely are acting like that doesn't exist. Every time I mention R&D, I get a whistling sound. We're not doing it. We're not thinking about it. We're not paying attention to it. As a state, we're not paying attention to it, and it's hurting us badly. How many of you know what an SBIR is? Anybody? SBIR. One over here. Yeah, well, they cheat. All right. They studied for the test. Right. Okay. Small Business Innovation Research Grant. One of the single best predictors is whether you're going to have a competitive economy. And yet none of you know what it is. And all of you are pretty politically active, or you wouldn't be here. And most of you run businesses, or you wouldn't be here. Small Business Innovation Research Grants. The higher the percentage of your state GDP in SBIR grants, the more globally competitive your state is. We're ranked 41st in the nation. 41st. Wichita gets one about every 3,000 years or something. We're not very good at all. We got to get better at that. It's a federal program. When I first started talking about this, people said, well, we don't want to take federal money. We don't like that. We don't want to become dependent on federal money. I thought, I get that. But if nobody gets it, then it's fair. If everybody else gets it and is taking it, and we don't because of principle, then we may as well just go ahead and stick the gun to our heads and end it now, because the reality is they're going to beat us. They're going to. They're going to take the money. It's the old thing about why do you rob banks? It's because that's where the money is, right? It's not. So we really do need to focus on this. You can't become dependent on it. You can only get maximum of 2 tranches of money, and then you must go private sector. But what this money allows is for you to create a prototype of a new technology that you then can see whether it could work. And the second tranche allows you to create enough of a market position to be able to help your angel fund people understand what you have. But it's the single best predictor. We don't have a state policy on it, we don't have a city policy on it, and we're not supporting it. Absolutely crucial for the future, absolutely crucial. And we should be able to help with that. That is a very big part of what we need to be doing. Second issue, workforce. Workforce. Businesses will locate where they can get the right kind of employee. If they can't get the right kind of employee, they won't locate there. They won't grow there. We're exporting $150 million a year of educated workers. What does that tell you? The businesses here aren't hiring, and they're going to where they can get the jobs. That's a big problem, which means we continue to dilute our workforce because we haven't figured out how to help build up the businesses. We aren't doing the R&D that creates the higher level positions. We don't have much going in terms of our formal work and supply chains. We really aren't taking an economic development perspective. Instead, we're still doing the buffalo hunt, and as most cities are. Quality of life, hardest thing to sell. Absolutely hardest thing to sell. Why do we need an arena? Why should the public pay for an arena? Why am I even talking about football? Right? People can live who can do this work wherever they want to. The entire world wants the same people that Wichita wants. It's no longer just, are we going to lose them to Tulsa or Kansas City? It's, are we going to lose them to Singapore? Are we going to lose them to Bahrain? Are we going to lose them to London? Are we going to lose them to Berlin? Quality of life absolutely matters. And if you don't think so, don't invest. The bottom line is R&D, workforce, and quality of life are the three keys that will move us forward. And those are very hard things to sell, particularly the last one, very hard to sell. And I understand that. But without it, you will lose. You will lose. You can prepare the workforce, they'll walk away, because they can. You do the R&D, no problem, they'll implement it in Chicago. You got to have a reason for the people to want to raise their families here and to be here. And what really drives that is quality of life. Because that's really where you're going to make it or not. Okay, so what are we doing? We're trying to reposition the university entirely. This university, I jokingly say, I keep expecting the DeLorean to appear in my garage from Back to the Future, because what we're really doing is the modern version of what people like Emory Lindquist and Harry Corbin and Clark Allberg did. Somewhere along the line this got lost, don't know why, don't know where, but I learned all of this from them. And so what we're trying to do is the modern version of what they were trying to do. We are trying to reconnect Wichita State to the needs of the people of South Central Kansas. That's what we're trying to do. And that's very different positioning. So, we're building an innovation campus. When I first came to Town, called my executive team together, and I said, man, the one thing I know, I will never touch that golf course. 6 months later, it's like, oh, why did I say that? God, we got to take the golf course. Then we sat around the table and developed and really kind of did okay, which one of us have to go tell Lou Heldman that he's now going to go tell everybody we're taking the golf course? You tell him. No, not me. I don't want to go be the one to tell him. You knew that was going to be a joy. But at the end of the day, we had to. We had to take the golf course to make it work, to be what we were trying to be. Secondly, we're redeveloping our curricula. We're looking at what does the people actually need. Not what I wish I could teach, but what is it they actually need. When I was here before, I created a course called the Sociology of Town Planning. I worked for 5 years to get that class in the curriculum. I was so excited. I taught it once, I got 20 people. The next time I tried to teach the class, nobody signed up. All 20 people in Wichita that needed that course had it the first time I taught it, right? But by God, it was my specialty. I was going to teach that class and how little there was to it. And so when I became department chair, the first class I eliminated was my class. So what we're trying to do is to move the curriculum so it's closer to what the people actually need, not what I wish were true. I mean, I truly do wish every person in Wichita needed the Sociology of Town Planning. It'd be truly, that'd be a great course, but they don't. Second, we're focusing a lot on workforce, huge amount on workforce. What does it look like to have an educated and trained workforce? And by the way, an educated workforce isn't just about whether or not you can write code. It's about whether you understand culture, whether you can read and write, whether you can work in groups, whether you understand culture, whether you understand the people you're working with enough to be able to actually work with them. So it isn't just the hard skills, but it's also what we call the soft skills. And so many of these same skills are liberal arts skills, but they're absolutely crucial if you're going to be any good. If you're really going to be good, you have to have both. It has to work. R&D. We're trying to become a tier 1 R&D research university. We're not yet, but we're getting better. Tier 1 university has to have at least $100 million a year of extramural funded research, where this year we're at 70, up from 50. And we're going to put a push on over the next 2 years to get above 100. There's many reasons for that, but number one of which is we'll have more people that can actually create things, make it happen. So we're putting a lot of pressure on that. We are looking at merging with WATC. And we think that will happen in the next legislature, and any of you who win, we would like your vote. This is a very different model of education. Totally different thought process. What we're focusing on as a university is what do we need to do to make this region competitive, period. And what we know is that the old structure doesn't work. It hasn't worked for a long time, and we like it so well, we hate to admit it, but it's time to change it. And so what we're trying to do is amalgamate with them. We're going to make them a college of the university. They will remain open admission. They will also continue to do pre-collegiate work. They will continue to teach welding. Why? Because we need that. And we're calling it from the GED to the PhD. Whatever you need to be competitive, we're going to be able to offer under one roof. You tell me what you need, and we're going to be able to offer it. I know that there will be a person, at least one, who comes in thinking they're going to be a welder, and 7 or 8 years later ends up with a PhD in philosophy. I know that. I also know that there are going to be people who are mechanical engineers who go, wait a minute, if I could weld, I could create my own prototype and I wouldn't have to try to explain it to somebody else, and I could get it done the right way, and if I mess it up, I can fix it. And so I will bet you that there will be master's and doctoral mechanical engineers who get welding certificates. And they should. And they should. And so our intent in bringing them in isn't to undo anything. If you want to come in as a regular student to the rest of the university, you go through our normal admissions process. If you want to come in and do workforce preparation, you come in through this college, prove you can do collegiate level work, and once you've proven it, take courses wherever you need to. But the basic model is, what does the community need to be competitive? What workforce, what education, what quality? Okay. Now, we've tied our student recruitment, and this is something that's hard for people that haven't thought about it to get, so I would just ask you to work with me here a second. When we trade as Wichita, Greater Wichita, when we trade with other urban areas, right? What happens is a trade good goes from here to Oklahoma City. It's possible it'll go to Ponca City, it's possible, but the majority of it goes to Oklahoma City. If we trade in Texas, the majority of it goes to Dallas-Fort Worth, not to Kylene, okay? So what we asked the regents to do was to allow us to take our major trade partners and treat them as in-state for the purposes of tuition. Why? Well, there aren't that many Kansans. The number of high school graduates are stable to declining. And so if we're going to build a workforce, we've got to just get more bodies. Just have to. Second, who sends your kids out of state to go to school? Right? You, exactly. The people who own the businesses, the people who manage the businesses, it's not the janitor, it's not the secretary. It's the decision makers in the organization. So we are increasing the number of people in our workforce, and we're creating relationships with the very people who buy our goods. That's why we're focusing on those metro areas and not on other parts. So this is a conscious linking of economic development and the need to grow the workforce and the student body. Very different model. Now, well, what about Kansans? Are you leaving them out? No. Heavens no. We can handle about 22,000 students. We're about 14.5. So we'll take all Kansans who meet our standards. No problem. Well, yeah, but the legislature has to pay for it. Yeah, no. The legislature gives us a flat amount of money to run the university. If we have one out-of-state student, if we have 10 million out-of-state students, the legislature gives us exactly the same amount of money. By the way, if we have every Kansan that's in college come to Wichita State, we still get exactly the same amount of money. Nothing's changed. It's a flat amount of money. So it has nothing to do with cost to the people of Kansas. We're not leaving Kansans out, and there's no additional cost. They're paying us to be here, and we appreciate that. So this is the I-35 corridor. It's the area with which we most trade. It's absolutely crucial that we understand that, because when we make plans, we tend to think of Derby as a foreign country. Right? They speak English down there, I've been told. Yeah. Okay. Not sure about Oklahoma. That's an entirely different thing, but we do know. Right. And so what we're trying to do is we're trying to look at, this is the dominant trade group with which we work. Yes, we ship overseas. Yes, we ship to Seattle. But this is the dominant trade corridor. By 2050, we effectively will be one large corridor with a whole bunch of cattle around Emporia. But this is the expectation of what the urbanized area will look like by 2050. The biggest single economy right now is Dallas-Fort Worth. And so we're trying to link to that. It's actually bigger than Houston. And Houston and Dallas-Fort Worth are growing together really fast. Does that make some sense? You see? So that's what we're trying to work through. Okay. So what have we done so far? We've created a new faculty reward system. We now can hire faculty for the purpose of creating patents and working with industry. That just happened. We're really excited about that. That's brand new. We've created a badge system. If you need a specific skill in your business, come to us. We'll work it through with you. We can do it in a few weekends if it's a short course. And we can put it on the student's transcript so that you can document they've actually completed it well. We've gone to market-based tuition. Right now, we're offering a lot of discounted tuition for in-service teachers to try to improve the quality of education. And we think that's a really important thing. Now, on the other hand, if you can pay us more than regular tuition, we'll take it. We're market-based, right? So, and we're looking at athletics and arts. I announced that I'm very interested in being in a different athletic conference. And not because I don't like the Missouri Valley, but because it matters who your friends are. When people talk about us, who are they going to compare us to? So I want to be in a conference that we go, yeah, they're more like them. Oh yeah, I agree with that. We're more like them. Okay, the Innovation Campus, the old golf course. If you haven't driven by 21st and Oliver, please do. You won't be able to go down Oliver if you come from the north, so come from the south. But every place we have a star on that map, there's construction underway or in design. Starting at the bottom of the map, our engineering building will be finished in November. It houses 25 experiential laboratories, no classrooms, no offices. It is all about hands-on real work. It will house the Young Entrepreneurs Program, and it houses a community-based makerspace. So if you have an idea for that product you always wanted to create, but you don't have the tools, we can fix it for you. The next one is Airbus. They move in over Christmas. We're excited to have them. The one above is the mall that will run all the way over to the new Starbucks, which is at the top of the frame. So you can get that $7 cup of coffee you always wanted. And by the way, there's 11 car line, so you can wait for 10 other people to get their $7 cup of coffee before you get yours. The new residence hall, it's a private apartment building with underground parking. And it will be built right in the center of campus. Behind that is 19th Street, which is mainly done. And the other star is Innovation Boulevard, which is also mainly done. And the star down in the old part of campus is a parking garage, which will give us 450 more places that students can't park. Been around higher ed a long time. They say if the students are complaining about food and parking, you won. Anyway. So the basic model, use what we know about economic geography to inform how you do whatever you're doing in economic development. Use what we know about markets to understand what you do in economic development. And use the fundamentals of market-based management as a public policy tool. When I used to teach this, Charles Koch hadn't written his book, so I didn't know his words. It was the same stuff, just different words. 90+% of all land use in the United States is based on market, despite what we all think. We think we can zone, we think we can change things. Yeah, in the end, the market wins. Focus on enterprises and clusters, and understand that R&D, workforce, and quality of life matter. And with that, I will stop.
We'll take questions now. I'll try to get to our Pachyderm Club members first, and our guests are welcome to ask as well.
You never addressed the state taxes, so if we can get a zero tax like Texas and Florida, that should bring people to Kansas.
As much as I like to believe that's true, no. There's no evidence that taxes are a big deal one way or another in the empirical literature. Yeah. Well, what Texas did, I've studied Texas. What Texas did is they replaced business taxes with oil severance taxes. And so they're providing all the same services, they just aren't charging the business directly. So what you're seeing is that you have to provide the service, you have to find a way of doing it. If you look at the studies that are done by the consulting groups on how businesses make decisions, and because they want them to make decisions, this is not a Democrat thing or Republican thing, it's the people who are trying to figure it out. Taxes are like number 10 or 11 on their list of things they care about. The number one issue is workforce, number one. Number two issue is supply chain. So, taxes, I'm not saying they're unimportant, but they're certainly not anywhere near the highest priority issue.
Over here with Vic.
Dr. Bardo, what % of the students at Wichita U are foreign exchange students, and what % of those remain in our workforce here? How many of them go back?
I'm glad you asked that question. About 12% are foreign exchange. This year, the graduate foreign exchange market died around the country, not just us. I thought we were going to be down a huge amount because we lost 400 graduate students as a result of the collapse of the international market. We're probably going to end up close to where we were last year despite that, because some good people did a lot of work. Our current laws force them to leave. And everybody thinks they go home, and they don't. They go to Vancouver. And they then directly compete with us in North America. Or they go to Europe, or they go to other countries that directly compete with us. It is a really bad public policy issue, and I'm telling you this as a non-aligned person. I don't care which party wins. I care about effectiveness. If you're a Republican and you support me, I love you. If you're a Democrat and you support me, I love you. If you don't support me, what's the matter with you, right? So, bottom line is, we are hurting ourselves tremendously by causing these students to leave. We have to fix that. But we've made enough issues that nationally there's a collapse in the graduate international market, and that's a problem for us. It's a big problem for Wichita State, but it's a huge problem nationally.
Over here with Kathy.
Please.
How has the governor's cuts to higher education impacted all the ideas and innovation things that you presented today? And if it's going to continue to have a negative impact, what is your plan for countering that?
Governors do what they have to do. I met with Sam Brown back the other day, and he said, "I'm surprised you let me in your office given I cut your budget." And I said, you know, if I were in your shoes, I probably would have ended up having to cut my budget too. I get it. It takes a certain amount of money to operate an enterprise. And we'd all like to believe, and if you look at all the stuff that's around on higher ed, we all like to believe that higher ed is highly bloated. And I will tell you from my perspective, there is some bloat. Some of it we create ourselves, most of it not. If we could deregulate higher ed a lot, we could reduce the bloat. The amount of regulation we're under is phenomenal, and it's getting more. So I have to have the people who do that. I don't have a choice. I have to meet the regulation requirements. So, just give you a simple example. The state can't fund retirement right now. Under current regulations, I have to carry the unfunded state retirement on my balance sheet, right? Which means I can't borrow money to build buildings because the portion of that unfunded balance that relates to Wichita State has to be carried under current regulation on my balance sheet. I didn't do it, the university didn't do it, but we have to carry it. We have potential to grow programs this community needs. I don't have the money. So we're trying to get the private sector to chip in. The new dormitory that we're building, not one penny of university money is going into that. Not one penny. Now, is that the best solution? Don't know. I know there's no choice, right? I mean, there may be a reason why that's a good idea, maybe a reason it's a bad idea. If I'm gonna have a dormitory, that's my option. So that's what I'm doing. The Innovation Campus, not one penny tuition's gone into it. The students absolutely believe that it is. We find other ways of making things work. Where it is harder, you know, I got federal government, the county, the city, and private investors have paid every penny to, and the state, have paid every penny of the Innovation Campus. No local money is going into it, all right? I can't build academic curricula that way. I can't respond to businesses that way. So there has to be some base. And right now we're struggling. We're going through an entire look at everything in the organization to see if I can pull some money together to start a couple of programs that need to be started. Now, I think that's a good thing, but it'd even be better if we were less regulated.
Doctor, you might call this buffalo hunting, but a survey was done a few years ago that said that insurance companies and many other financial services firms will not locate a major office to a city that does not have an actuarial college or actuarial schools close by. Have you ever considered bringing in an actuarial college?
Oh, absolutely. We do it through
risk management, stuff like that?
Sure, we do it through accounting. I do it in the same area. I right now need a auditor, a professor of audit. No experience, brand new minted PhD, $150,000 plus fringes to start. Same with actuaries. You're just going to pay through the nose because everybody needs them. We want them. We think there's value in it, but right now I don't have the cash. My number one issue right now is supply chain management. That is where we're hearing from every business out there that they really need help. And so we're cobbling that together as best we can right now. The second issue is material science, and that would include chemical engineering. The huge opportunities in materials in this city because of the nature of the engineers we have. Huge opportunity. It cuts across almost all the clusters. And so those are the two I'm working on right now. But would I like to do these other things? Absolutely.
Please. Dr. Bardo, thank you very much for being here. It's absolutely a pleasure to hear you. I'll take things down a notch. Let's talk about football.
All right.
Wichita needs a good football team. We need a Division I school to support it.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that.
I announced last December that we were looking at both conference and football. And I announced them together because when I looked at the conferences that we want to be in, they all support Division I football. What we're learning is that there are conferences that support Division I football that like us better without football than they do if we have it. So what we're doing is we're splitting the issue, and we're going to get the conference right first, and then we're going to turn to football. The conferences I have most interest in, if we build a football program that matches their conference, I believe would take that football program in. They simply don't want a fledgling program that drives down the perception of their conference. Now, I'm a football fan. I tried to play football, and I tried to play football in high school, and I was really bad. I was slow, and I made up for it by being light. I mean, it's every coach's dream, right? God, I was awful. But I learned to love the game. And I'm an Ohio State alum. And I had on my bucket list going to an Ohio State-Michigan game. And a friend of ours, who's a band director, a few years ago called and said, I've got us in with the marching band at the Ohio State-Michigan game. If God had taken me that day, I would have been a very happy man. And Michigan didn't score, which was even better. Yeah, and I got to sing all the songs, most of which I can't sing here. Football is going to be a business decision. It is not an emotional decision. I want football. I'm not going to make any bones about it. But I also want to be 7 foot tall and be able to go to my left. And so the bottom line is, if we go back to football, it is going to be a business decision based on what it does for the university and the community, and it will be a very public decision. There's going to be no secret about how we got there, and there's going to be no secret about why we're there. The biggest thing I tell people is that my wife and I had season tickets for 10 years that we were on faculty at Wichita State. One of my fondest memories of my son, he was born in July of 1980, and at the very first football game in 1980, he was in a snuggly on my chest, sound asleep. Right? Because we were not going to miss a game just because we had a baby. Yeah, what do you mean miss a game? We aren't going to miss a game. I think we probably lost 800-0 or something, but I mean, it didn't matter. Right? The bottom line is today, football is an event. It starts on Friday and goes through Saturday night. In 1980, you drove to Wichita State, you went in the stadium, you bought stale popcorn, you watched the team, you got back in your car and you complained, and you went to a friend's house and had a drink or went home. Today, it's an entire mobile party that goes for a whole 24 hours. And so the game is the centerpiece, but it is an entirely different thing. It has a huge contribution to quality of life, both on campus and in the community. So if we do it, we're going to do it right. We're going to try to build something that you're proud of, that we're proud of, and that makes sense within the context of what we're trying to do with the university. This university needs to grow. If we add football, we will grow on average by about 600 people pretty quickly. And I think we'll grow a lot faster than that, given that we're recruiting so heavily out of Oklahoma and Texas. And that means more residence halls, it means more other things. But that's where we are with football. Let's get the conference right, and then let's look at what that means.
Here with
Let me take you back to the last couple of questions and ask for a little clarification, because when you say that you're talking about football, you've got a Title IX aspect from the regulatory end, and that's going to be a significant factor going forward, and I'm not sure how that drives the university side to do it, but when you mentioned the pension side in terms of the costs being imposed, I'm thinking that's a mandate from Washington in terms of the accounting, where those accounting costs are brought down or carried.
Sure.
And as opposed to something coming out of...
Oh, I'll be right up front with you. We will lose money on football. 100% chance we'll lose money. If you only account for football as football, 100% chance we will lose, unless we can convince Alabama that they need to change their name and move here. That's an entirely different thing because they make money. 25 schools make money, everybody else loses. It's the reality. So if you think we're going to start this because, oh boy, we're going to get rich, no. But look at what other things happen as a result, and when you add across, it's like a lost leader at a store. It's no different. I'm going to sell milk for $1 a gallon. Well, what's the chances of a person going in and just buying milk? Right? They're going to buy a lot of other stuff while they're in there, and that's where they make the money. That's what football is. It is about the culture of the campus. It's about whether or not the student chooses you. It's about the role you play in the community. It's all of those things. And so you have to account for it broader than just simply, is there a positive or a negative outcome of football? With the exception of 25 universities, you lose money in football, period. That's it. Under Title IX, there are 3 prongs to Title IX. And I only know that because I review for the NCAA. There are 3 prongs to Title IX. Prong 1, you're at equity. Same number of women as men, same scholarship levels, you're at equity. Prong 2, you have a 10-year plan to get to equity. Prong 3, women don't care, they're happy where they are. Right? And actually, my old school, we met that qualification. There was nobody else, no other program that they wanted that we didn't have, and we didn't have as many women as men in scholarship. But when we went out and looked in the high schools, they didn't offer other things. Now that it's changing, in which case they'll have to add more women's sports. So we would go under prong 2, and we would build to equity, which would allow us to start and move forward. We have an Olympic pool and diving tank on campus already. Don't have to build a facility. You can put an NCAA track inside Cessna, or soccer field inside Cessna Stadium. That needs to get fixed anyway, the ground does. So you build a minimum NCAA soccer field, and you've got your stadium. So there are many ways in which this can work, but we would go under prong 2.
Joseph?
As most of us know, WSU is surrounded 100% by African American community. I wanted to know if you can give me several ideas as to how it would benefit the people there.
Sure. Let me start off by just saying that's not actually right. WSU is surrounded on the west by African Americans. It's got a mixed neighborhood to the north and a mixed neighborhood to the east, and a very mixed neighborhood to the south rather, and a very mixed neighborhood to the east. We're a highly diverse neighborhood, but the neighborhoods that are African American really are to our west in terms of being almost 100% African American. So what we're doing is we've created a group that is community-based, that is going out and working with the South Fairmount neighborhood to try to figure out how we can help the South Fairmount neighborhood develop. And the reason we started in South Fairmount is it's the closest community to us. It has a real mix of people. Everything from drug addicts to gang members to normal citizens to new migrants to just everybody in between. And so we wanted to start in a neighborhood that was confined in terms of geography, that we weren't trying to do something so big we couldn't figure it out. And secondly, that we wanted one that was so diverse that we had an opportunity to learn how to work with the population. We are then going to move that model, once we understand it, to the West and to try to assist in the West next. I've joined the Urban League board to try to get more of a sense of what people are worrying about, and I'm feeding that back to this group. But we are working in the South Fairmount neighborhood. The other thing that's important is if you look at the new engineering building, if you drive up 17th Street, it's the only building at the university that faces outward. It actually faces the community, not the university. The reason is that maker space is for community people. We want people to come in. And the Koch Foundation has given us millions of dollars to pay for low-income people's memberships to allow them to learn the skills they need to start their own businesses or to create their own products. So we're really excited about that. But it is the only building on campus that faces outward. And as a conscious, we want you here, we want you in, we want you as part of us. That's also the neighborhood we started our work in.
Okay, over here, this will probably be our last question.
Okay.
Given the financial predicament that you've outlined, do you have one best practice state that you would like to hold up for us to emulate in Kansas when it comes to finance?
You know, in terms of finances, you know, most states now are starting to replace the money they took out. I think 26 states, if I remember the numbers correctly, are starting to replace the money that they took out of higher ed. They finally realized they're eating their seed corn. So there is no one. Georgia's doing some very interesting things. Someone mentioned Texas earlier. They're kind of making a mess right now. I'm not quite sure where they are, what they're doing. Florida has been trying some experiments that I don't think are very good. North Carolina's doing an experiment that I'm watching closely. They are picking up, for 3 universities, they're paying all but $500 of tuition out of general fund to try to encourage people to go to school. Kind of an interesting model. Virginia may have the best model right now, where they said to the research universities, if you focus on economic development, we're going to deregulate you, which I think is a real win. So there's a number of experiments. The experiment we're doing with WATC is a national model, and people are watching that closely to see what works. But I don't think there's any one place I go, oh, boy, they got it right. They're doing it right. There are experiments going on all over the place. I know states I don't want to emulate, Illinois. They've got their universities funded to December, and they're not sure they can keep them open. You know, that's not a good model. So I think there's the ones that I've been most interested in, Virginia and Georgia, been watching the closest because I think they're smart in what they're doing. Texas keeps trying, but they kind of give themselves crossways. And then I'll stop there. I think those are the ones I think are best. Mm-hmm. Please. Well, thank you all.
Dr. John Bardo.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.